To the Budget and Finance Committee meeting, the January 14th, 2013 edition. The first two items on the agenda today, RS 2013-558 and RS 2013-559, both must be deferred by rule. So if there's no objection, I'd like to take those up together. Seeing none, Councilman Matthews, you're recognized on RS 2013-558, which amends the capital improvements budget for fiscal year 2013 to add 3 projects, and on 559, which determines to issue $110 million in GSD general obligation bonds to provide funding for various projects contained in the mayor's proposed mid-year 2013 capital spending plan.
I move to defer each bill for one meeting.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. And we are deferred for one meeting. Back to the agenda, RS 2013-560 approves a Financial Empowerment Centers grant from Living Cities in the amount of $435,000 to the mayor's office to implement a program designed to improve the financial stability of households. Councilman Matthews.
Move approval.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. And you adopt. Next is RS 2013-561. Approves an application for a state grant of $100,000 to the Metro Arts Commission for general operational support during fiscal year 2013-2014. Councilman Matthews. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right, it passes. Next is RS 2013-562, approves a grant of $101,023 to the Juvenile Court for Juvenile Accountability Incentive Block Grant Program Services to enhance court staffing. Councilman Matthews. Motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? You adopt. Next is RS 2013-563, approves a state grant of $10,000 to the state trial courts to enhance courtroom technology. Second. Motion second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? You adopt. RS 2013-564 approves a grant of $3,401 from the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee to the Davidson County Sheriff's Department to build outdoor shelters for animals in collaboration with the Metro Animal Control Center. Second. Motion and a second. Discussion. Councilman Tiger.
One of my favorite subjects for Mr. Taylor to discuss. John, where the units or the structures you all build, where do they go?
They're built down at the Animal Control Center, and they're there to house any animals they have to house. They can't house inside, and the dog houses and or pens we build go with the animal once it's adopted, if the family needs it. Is
there a cost to the family?
Not that I'm aware of from our end. I think as long as they're somewhat indigent or need that house, they get it.
And approximately how many animals were adopted because of this program last year?
I know we built approximately 20 dog houses and a couple of chicken coops and some other pens for smaller animals.
Great, thank you.
All right, sir.
Further discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. You adopt. RS 2013-565 approves a Fourth Amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between Metro Government and the Hospital Authority to update the Hospital Authority's employee benefits system. Motion and a second. Discussion. Councilman Tigard.
John's analysis is talks about a lot of really good things happening there. can we break down exactly where these savings, how they occur, and exactly how the arithmetic happens on this?
Is there someone from the hospital authority in attendance? Mr. Boyd, would you come forward, please?
Essentially, you know, the original resolution passed back in 2010, and we actually implemented in 2011. The latest analysis that we have, and had another meeting with the group today, is year over year, it's really around between $700,000–800,000 a year cumulative savings on the work-related injury claims.
And how is that figure, how does that happen?
Well, I think it happens as a byproduct of how the work-related injury program is managed. Obviously, there's multiple components to it. One being a more restrictive closed-type panel. Second, a very active case management and return-to-work program. And obviously, thirdly, if claims are paid on a full work-related injury program, it's a lower percentage paid, but that's a very small amount of the savings.
So if I'm hearing this discussion correctly, Rich, the hospital authority has a little bit different set of criteria than what general government would have on getting these folks back to work and back on the payroll and off the injury.
Yes, it's a different program, a lot of the steps of which we are working and moving in those directions.
So general government is heading in this direction also? I
think to a great extent in a lot of areas, yeah. I mean, we're still fleshing all the details. The legal department and HR have been working on and looking at overall issues related to the IOD program in general, and are going to come with some specific recommendations here over the next several weeks and months.
I guess to me it seems like it's almost magic that you've got, this one department takes over, and within a year, with different measures, different criteria, different guidelines, whatever measures you use, all of a sudden there's $700,000–800,000 savings. So it obviously is very attractive government-wide. Am I missing anything at all?
No, I think as I've told the council before, that our IOD program in general is one program that I'm most concerned about in terms of rising cost, and one that doesn't seem to have any limits as to the cost growth. And so really the director of law in consultation with the HR director are working on ways to implement programs that will start bringing these costs into line. It's a serious issue for us, but it's not one that you can change overnight, but one that we're, I think, getting ready to make some positive steps.
Now, this issue before us is a council issue. We hear rumors and talk about public safety being changed, but that will not come before us. That is a civil service issue. Is that
the issue? I think there's two issues that have been proposed. Actually, three issues that have been presented to the Civil Service Commission by rule. They have their responsibility for. One relates to the pay you receive when you're on injury on duty. The second sort of ties light duty with injury on duty. The time frame runs co-equal, so you don't go on one then on the other. And the third just clarifies that 180 means 180 days, or it's actually clarified 6 months, because different workers work different amounts of days. And so a 24-on firefighter works different days. Days mean different things to them than does a 8-hour, 9 to 5 worker. So those are three changes that are the administration has proposed to the Civil Service Commission, which are under review right now, and they're scheduled to vote on them next February.
Thank you.
Or next month in February.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor vote aye. Those opposed, you adopt. Next on the agenda, we have RS 2013-566, sponsors Matthews and Weiner, approves a grant of $1,138,500 to the Metro Board of Health for sexually transmitted disease services and HIV/AIDS prevention and surveillance. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor vote aye. Those opposed, and you adopt. RS 2013-567 by Weiner and Matthews approves an agreement between the Metro Health Department and the Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services for the purpose of verifying citizenship and immigration status of applicants for adult dental services. Motion and a second. Discussion. Councilman Tigard.
So if I'm reading this correctly, if an illegal immigrant goes for dental services and this check is done, what happens? What does the health department do if someone is determined to be ineligible based on their immigration status?
Mr. Chairman, Councilman Tigard, this is based on a state law that passed last spring that requires not just health departments, but any entity that grants public benefits as defined in the state and federal laws to check for legal residency before issuing a public benefit. And after an extended number of conversations between us and the legal departments here and the state health department, it was determined that the only benefit that we offer that falls under the definition of a public benefit is some of our adult dental care. The law prescribes what you do if someone either is not or cannot prove that they are legally in the country. You don't deny service the first time. If somebody comes in and they cannot prove their citizenship and they have an issue, you can see them then. But if they cannot prove their citizenship, and how you do that is set out in the statute, then the next time they come, they have to be prepared to bring the documents to prove that they're a citizen. Or they're here legally, not necessarily a citizen.
So what happens on that second time if they're still unable to? What do you all do?
They cannot receive services.
Do you call anybody? Do you report this? Do you?
Yes, sir. There's a section of the law that puts a requirement on the provider of the benefit to report certain instances.
Thank you.
Further discussion. Councilwoman Allen.
Thank you. Can you describe, Tom, can you describe what those instances might be? Under what circumstances would you need to report them and to whom?
Councilor Dan, I'd have to, it's set out in the law. I don't remember exactly what it is, but there are provisions in there for reporting violations of the law for people that get a benefit or try to get a benefit. I think it's receiving a benefit, actually, mostly.
Further discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor vote aye. Those opposed, you adopt. RS 2013-568 by Gilmore and Matthews approves an application for a state grant of $7,000 to the Metro Board of Parks and Recreation to supplement the Big Band Dance program in Centennial Park. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor vote aye. Those opposed, and you adopt. Next, we have RS 2013-570 by Councilman Matthews, approves an amendment to an agreement between the U.S. Army and Metro Water Services for the Mill Creek Watershed Feasibility Study. There's a motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote no, and you adopt. Next on our agenda, bills on second reading, BL 2013-338 by Councilman Tigard and Dominy amends the Metro Code to require certain sole source contracts to be approved by resolution of the council. There's a motion and a second. Councilman Tigard.
I think there's going to be an amendment offered, so I would defer to Councilman Stein first.
Councilman Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Councilman Tigert. I mean, this is obviously a return bill, and there was speculation early on in the course of this bill that this was targeted at a particular entity. The sponsors, both the original sponsor and the current lead sponsor, have vehemently denied that that was ever the case. And so I just thought I'd bring this amendment simply to just clarify that. What this amendment does, and I guess I would move its approval for the purposes of discussion, Mr. Chair. What this amendment does is it would exclude contracts for economic development initiatives and services, which applies to the Chamber of Commerce. What this does, though, in effect, is it leaves in place, because the Chamber of Commerce contract for economic development is part of our annual budget process, and it is specifically listed as an appropriation in that bill, and we have every opportunity to debate it, to discuss it at that time, as we have done from time to time over the years. I would also say that going to the purpose, my understanding of the purpose of this bill, to scrutinize sole source arrangements, there is nothing that has been more heavily scrutinized over the last several months than this relationship with the Chamber. So I would urge that this is certainly not going under the radar, but that it ought to stay within our budget process, and this would ensure that it do that. And then I guess the purpose for the sponsors, let them speak to themselves, is to bring any other sole source relationships above the $250,000 to the attention of the council, because I assume that those have not been before our attention, whereas this contract for dealing with economic development initiatives has been before us annually since its inception, and I would move approval of the amendment.
There's a motion and a second on the amendment. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please vote aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Seeing no opposition, the amendment is passed, and we're back on the regular bill. Councilman Tiger.
Normally, I would not bring a bill that it was just before us, but council members, we had another example in the recent NES audit of a sole source contract. Now, NES is a special entity, as we know, but when 17 or 18 million or 33 million, whatever that magic number was, of contracts were awarded on a sole source basis, it once again shows me that there is the potential for abuse there, and the more scrutiny that this body has, we're not talking about a great number of contracts. It's less than 5, I think, but there needs to be a really good reason why this government, with all the strength of our bidding and the popularity of vendors to provide services, there has to be a really good reason why we would turn to one company and exclude all others from a bid process. So the NES situation was the reason that I'm bringing this back, and I was glad to support Councilman Stein's bill amendment, because it absolutely had nothing to do with the Chamber in my mind. It has to do with the potential for abuse for sole source contracts and the ability of this body to further scrutinize them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the bill as amended, please say aye. Those opposed? And you adopt. BL 2013-339 by Matthews and McGuire authorizes the Industrial Development Board to negotiate and accept payments in lieu of ad valorem taxes for the benefit of AmSurge Corporation. There's a motion and second. Any discussion? Council Lady Berry.
Thank you, Chair. I think, is there somebody here from AmSurge?
Yes.
Yes, great, thank you. And I can direct my questions to the chair or to the folks from AmSurge. I think that in scrutinizing this potential resolution that we're considering, I just wanted to get some additional information, and I'm hoping that they can answer. One of the things that we always look to when we propose something like this is the benefit to Davidson County taxpayers and the potential job growth. So I haven't seen any of that, so I would love to have an opportunity to hear from the company to talk about their job growth, and perhaps they could do that.
Would you please identify yourself?
Yes, my name is Daniel Bueller, and I'm the Vice President of Facilities Management and Construction, so I manage our real estate department.
All right.
To address Madam's question, AmSurge is a up-and-coming, I shouldn't say up-and-coming, we're a 20-year-old company, but we're seeing some accelerated growth over the last several years. Within the last 4 years, we've created 2 new business units. We've started an anesthesia company and a billing company. So right now we are at about 415 corporate employees, and we project our growth, just looking back over our history, we've projected our own growth at about 11% a year. We also have an independent consultant we're working with right now out of Atlanta that is looking at our facilities and looking at our growth, and have interviewed all of our business units, and they came back with a projection. Just as a matter of fact, this morning we met with them, and their projection for our growth was right at 10%. So we'll be looking at adding 40 or 50 jobs at least over the next, for next year, and then incrementally over the next 10 years or so. The nervousness that I got was as the consultants were presenting this morning, we're talking about a 15-year term on this lease for this building that we're going into, and they showed us being out of space again in 10 years. So we have talked with Mr. Aiken, who's developing the building for us, and we're talking with him about the opportunity to have first right of refusal on the building that is the building 1 in Burton Hills that's directly adjacent to the building that they're now building for us. So it's given us some solace that we won't be looking at another move over the next 10 years or so. So we're a fairly quickly growing company, and the types of jobs are a pretty good broad spectrum. One of the business units that we opened is located out near the airport. We relocated out of Burton Hills out near the airport. 2 years ago, that business unit didn't exist. We've got 70 people there now, and those are more kind of back office types of jobs. The corporate headquarters jobs that'll be located in Burton Hills are more professional oriented jobs. So we really do offer a pretty broad spectrum of job type to the community.
Thank you, Chair. Can I follow up just briefly to your question? Because you brought up the fact that you're growing so quickly and that you may actually run out of space before the actual term of this lease is complete, what, if any, kind of penalty is there for you in breaking this lease, say, because you grow so fast? Oh,
we're in it. I mean, we're signing up, so it'll be, it's not a lease that we're going to be able to turn our back on. We'd have to buy it out.
You'd have to buy it out?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And we don't look at doing that. I mean, we're a Davidson County company, and we wanted to stay here. And just simply because of the lack of opportunities that there were, we looked at a variety of different opportunities that never really came to fruition. Mr. Aiken was able to put together a pretty attractive deal. He went to the Planning Commission, actually got the zoning changed and such to accommodate us, because the other options that we were looking at were out of the county, just simply because there really were no really good viable options for us in Davidson County. But this one came up, and we were able to execute a lease with him.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Council Lady. Councilman Maynard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also agree with Council Lady Berry that when we look at deals like this, that we look at what is the value and how does the county benefit. And one of the ways that this deal could benefit the entire county is dealing with the job opportunities during construction. Mm-hmm. So during the construction phase, I don't know if the Aiken Group representative is here, but if you could speak to it since you are the leaseor. Lisa, what is the commitment regarding women, small and minority-owned business? I understand that you all, it's not a big project, but I also understand that your company is committed to having diversity during the construction phase. And I also understand you're willing to work with the Minority Caucus in your development during the construction phase to make sure that all Nashvillians in Davidson County have an opportunity for job opportunities. Is that correct?
I can't speak to Mr. Aiken's commitment to that, but I can tell you, though, that, again, this consultant that we talked with this morning, one of the facts that they presented to us was that our company is represented 55% by women. So that was an interesting just kind of factoid for us. But in terms of construction, I really don't know what Aiken's commitment is to that. But I do know, though, that all of the subcontract trades and things will be coming out of the local market. So in terms of, they're not going to be importing people from out of town. But I can certainly, I will be meeting with Mr. Aiken over probably the next few days to kick the project off. We're using a local architecture firm, Hastings Group, here in right downtown, as a matter of fact. And I will absolutely make sure that I bring that point to their attention, that that's a significant consideration.
Well, and I know it's been important to not only the Metro Council, but also through the administration. And we're just keeping in line with the other projects that have happened in the past, making sure that we have inclusion. We're dealing with our development and look forward to working with you all and also your developer.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Tigard.
Thank you. Mr. Bueller, do you have any statistics on your current employee mix in Burton Hills as to the number of Davidson County residents, employees versus out of county?
You know, I don't have that. I do not have that.
How difficult will it be to provide that before tomorrow night?
I can look to see. We've done zip code analysis, so I think that I can probably bring that with me tomorrow night.
That would be very helpful if you would get that to the council office.
I can commit to that.
Thank
so,
you.
like I said, I think I have that information pretty readily available.
Thank you. Councilman Stein.
Two questions. The first is a follow-up to Councilman Maynard's question, because it occurs to me that maybe Mr. Wiltshire has had conversations with the broader group of folks involved in this. Do you have any enlightenment on the issue about minority participation in this project?
I can just add that I don't want to disclose any trade secrets, but I have spoken with the general contractor that I understand Mr. Aiken is going to, or the Aiken company is going to hire to complete the construction. And my understanding is that they are willing and will deliver in writing a letter confirming that they are willing to meet with the council or the minority caucus to report on the percentage of small woman and minority-owned businesses that participate in the construction of the building. So I don't have that yet, but my understanding is that that is coming, and they have made that verbal commitment to the mayor's office.
Hang on to the microphone. My second question is that I think sometimes it's helpful to hear a oral explanation, and I think it would be helpful to all of us to hear from your perspective why the community should do this deal with this company at this time.
I would say that the mayor identified this company as Mr. Bueller indicated, as a fast-growing, innovative company. Sometimes when you say fast-growing, it doesn't paint an accurate picture. The CEO of the company has described them, I think perhaps quoting an analyst that covers the company, as the beige minivan of healthcare companies. And they mean that in the most positive light, in the sense that this company is plodding along, growing, is extraordinarily well-positioned given healthcare reform that's coming. And in light of both the quality of the jobs that the company has and the trajectory of the company, the mayor felt that this was an important company to make sure stayed in Nashville. Given the particular circumstances of this opportunity, i.e. the construction of new Class A office space, adding density in line with the objectives of the Planning Commission, the mayor felt it was appropriate to help try and even the playing field relative to the other options that the company had identified. As a publicly traded company, AmSurge has obligations to its shareholders to be financially responsible with their money. And given that, and given the substantial difference in the all-in rental rates, lease rates that they had for the alternatives in Davidson County versus the alternatives outside of Davidson County, we didn't bring it to an even basis, but as was described in another deal, when you're looking at a BMW versus a Mercedes-Benz, if the price is a huge difference, you just can't get there. It's just too much of a price difference. And that was the case here, but we believe with the proposal that's in front of the council, we've brought the choice for the company closer in line and felt it was appropriate in this case to retain 400 jobs. And given the growth trajectory that the company has laid out, we're talking about potentially 1,000 jobs by the terminate, 1,100 jobs potentially. And I know that's my math, that's not the company's statement, but a significant number of high-paying, attractive jobs that are in the most important private sector employer in this county. And so for the totality of those reasons, the mayor felt it was appropriate to encourage development. And again, this parcel is only currently collecting approximately $18,000 a year in property taxes. So we're not giving up anything that we're not currently getting, but we're getting new buildings, great jobs, and a great employer that's sort of based and founded in Tennessee and should remain a longtime corporate citizen of Davidson County.
And one follow-up to that, and over the 15-year arrangement here, at the end of those 15 years, what's your estimate, or what's the estimate that came from the assessor's office of how much additional or how much property tax we will actually end up having collected at the end of that 15 years? Is there an estimate there?
So the term of the incentive agreement is only for 8 years, and over during that 8 years, so the first 2 years of 100% abatement, and then years 3 through 8 at 60% abatement, the city will collect approximately $985,000 of taxes, property taxes, above what is otherwise would be collected on this property. So we're $1 million approximately to the good. And then, as Mr. Bueller has explained, the lease is actually for another 7 years. My recollection is that the estimated real property taxes on the building are approximately $416,000. So 7 times 416 is what, about another $2.8–3 million or so. So all in over 15 years versus this being a surface parking lot, the real property taxes generated on this parcel would be approximately $4 million to the good versus what the city would otherwise receive.
Thank you.
Councilman Tigard.
Matt, I want to make sure our math is absolutely correct. Now, the building that they'll be vacating is bringing in more property taxes now than this $18,000 field that's there. Do we know what that current property is bringing in? And assuming that they don't have an immediate tenant, obviously the property value on that one will drop significantly if it remains vacant for any amount of time. Has that been factored into this equation or not?
Given the quandary that the representative from AmSurge explained, there simply is, and given the vacancy rates in Burton Hills, which are extraordinarily low, it is not our belief that this will remain vacant for very long. And in fact, the owners of the property have already made some progress in filling in those leases, is my understanding. So given the dynamic and demand for office properties in the Burton Hills submarket, we do not believe that there would be a vacancy for a long time. But even so, I can't really speak to how the assessor's office would assess this property, but it did not, to answer your question directly, we did not factor into our analysis a diminution of value in the office space being vacated by AmSurge. And just to clarify, one of the issues was they're currently in chopped up space in 2 different buildings within Burton Hills. So it's not like there's one huge chunk that will need to be released. There are some smaller chunks, and so we have some confidence, given interest from other parties that's already been expressed, that this will be able to be leased to another entity, and we hope that that will happen without much of a gap. And looks like Mr. Bueller may have some comment there as well. I
just wanted to add that Mr. Archard of Archard Bell, he's the owner of the 2 buildings that we are now in. He actually participated with Mr. Aiken in coming to an agreement to develop that building on the site, fully knowing that AmSurge would be vacating his 2 buildings, because he was really not worried at all about backfilling the space. So he was kind of one of the heroes in this whole series of events in helping make this deal happen. So he's been very proactive with us and really doesn't see an issue with backfilling that space, and has assisted us in the tail end of our lease by allowing us to stay for a little bit longer period of time, because he's just simply not worried about losing us as a tenant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was listening to this presentation, and I'm looking at the numbers that have been thrown out there in terms of the value of the land and what we are expecting to get after this deal is put together. And there's a lot of numbers, and I've often wondered, and along with some of the other deals we've done over the years, is there a mechanism whereby we could take a look-see as to where we are maybe at the halfway point to verify these numbers that we're throwing out today. And I think that's one of the things that I have not seen happening a lot in the Dale deal and a lot of other deals. When we put these together, what mechanism do we have to say we're on track or we're not on track or we're behind what we projected? Is there any way we can determine that?
If there are benchmarks built into the deal that require X number of jobs by X year, then it would be the obligation of the company to prove to the government that it has met those benchmarks. With this particular deal, you don't have those benchmarks specifically built in, so there's really no way to verify in order for the deal to keep going with this particular one, but there is a mechanism for these type deals to do that.
So is there a problem with putting a benchmark in all these deals that we do, or why do we have them in some and some we don't?
Councilman, that's a good question. Each deal is negotiated individually, and certainly you have seen the policy of this administration to institute benchmarks in an increasing number of deals, and we certainly want to make sure that we're protecting the taxpayers of Davidson County, and Mayor Dean has been adamant about that. Given the structure of this deal and some of the issues around the private negotiations, we weren't able to put that in here, but given the growth trajectory of the company and the fact that in this case, the property taxes collected by the government are not directly dependent upon the number of jobs created, will still be, as I had stated earlier, $3 to $4 million to the positive by the termination of the lease at AmSurge, that there's substantial economic benefit to the city derived from the addition of additional office space in the Burton Hill submarket and keeping AmSurge here. But that is something that we try and do, each time.
So you think we'll be all right whether they have the benchmarks in or not?
Each deal has to be negotiated individually, and we certainly strive to get in place all the benchmarks that we can. But yes, sir, to answer your question, we are confident in the growth trajectory of the company.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Council Lady Allen.
I think I need to go on record as abstaining.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor vote aye. Aye. Those opposed? And the bill is passed. Next, we have BL 2013-340, sponsors Matthews and Tenpenny, authorizes the Industrial Development Board to negotiate and accept payments in lieu of ad valorem taxes for the benefit of Oberto Sausage Company. Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor vote aye. Aye. Those opposed? And the bill is adopted. BL 2013-342, sponsors Gilmore and Matthews, approves an agreement with the State Department of Transportation for the benefit of the Parks Department regarding construction and maintenance of the Richland Creek Greenway. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? And you have adopted. Seeing no further business before the committee, we adjourn.